We are talking about flavor balancing today. The best way to really explain how to balance flavors is to make a vinaigrette. So this is kind of a two-in-one. You're gonna get to learn a basic recipe for salad dressing or vinaigrette, and we're also gonna talk about fats, acids, sweetness, salty, spices, and how those blend together when you're cooking. This is really important when you are cooking on your own or following a recipe, because you wanna be able to taste all those different layers and all those different levels, so that the more you cook on your own, and you already know, like, I need my fat, I need my acid, I need my spice, I need my salt and pepper. We're gonna talk about a few of these ingredients and how they all work together in a vinaigrette so you can use it in other recipes. First things first, fat and acid. A fat is something like an olive oil. It could be a coconut oil, a sesame oil, an avocado oil, a grapeseed oil. Could also be a butter. So that is kind of the base of your flavor profile. Now what a fat does is it kind of coats the tongue and helps the flavors to stick on the tongue. So without that fat, the flavors just go right past your tongue. So you want to make sure to always have a little bit of fat, like an oil in a vinaigrette or a sauce, to make sure that your palate is able to really capture all the other flavors. Extra virgin olive oil is really important, that we always use that type of olive oil. Extra virgin means that it has not been processed by heat or chemicals. So obviously you want the least amount of processing in your food as possible, and especially with an olive oil, because it's going to take out all of those antioxidants and health benefits, and also the flavor when it's been treated. So Kirkland is actually a great brand. This is my favorite Trader Joe's brand. I also like Lucchini, I like California Olive Ranch. There are a few at Whole Foods that are good, but always go extra virgin. Now the next layer of flavoring is acid. And acid is a vinegar, it's a lemon, it's something really pungent. Something like a tomato has acid in it. So if you paired a tomato with an olive oil, you're gonna get that balance also. Or a tomato with a burrata cheese. Think about that pairing with this acid and a fat. So some of the acids that I would recommend using in a vinaigrette would be, first and foremost would be a balsamic. A balsamic is gonna offer some sweetness as well as an acidity. A white balsamic is also really nice if you don't want the dark color of the balsamic. It's gonna also add a little bit of sweetness. White wine or a champagne vinegar are gonna be nice additions to a dressing or sauce. A rice vinegar I don't use too much unless it's just a dash. It's also a little bit sweet. The most healthy vinegar that you could use would be an apple cider vinegar. You definitely want to go with something that is natural and unpasteurized. You don't want to get like a Heinz flavored apple cider vinegar. This is going to be really pungent and also really have a lot of health benefits. So it's a pairing of that fat and acid that's at the basis of pretty much all flavor balancing. The next thing you want to really pay attention to is the salt and the pepper. This one here is a Himalayan sea salt. I really love this one. I like having it in the well next to my stove so that I can just take a little pinch and really feel how much salt I'm adding. And then the pepper is a fresh ground pepper. The pepper corns are actually really, really good for you. They're filled with an essential oil, and that essential oil releases when you grind the pepper. So every time you grind that pepper and it comes out, you're gonna smell that fragrant pepper, and it's gonna add a lot of flavor to your food, as well as the health benefits of the essential oil. I have a lot of different kinds. I have mixes of them, and they all have a little bit different grind texture. So whether you want it like more coarse or less coarse, you can kind of play around with that a little bit. You can also use a salt grinder, something like this, which is gonna grind up that sea salt fresh. I forgot to mention the other acid that you could use would be citrus. So you can also use lemon juice to balance out acidity with the fats. I also have this really nice balsamic vinegar. Now this one I would not add into a dressing. That would be something that I would just sprinkle simply with olive oil, salt, pepper, and a nice balsamic over a salad. Something like a nectarine salad or a tomato burrata salad. This is really all you need. Don't get too fancy with a vinaigrette. All right, so a few other things that you can use in a vinaigrette. Some type of bitter, acidic flavoring like garlic or onion. Green onion is going to be a little bit more delicate of a flavor. A shallot is going to give it a little bit more of a stringent, strong flavor. And then of course garlic you want to be really cautious with, and maybe just use 1 or 2 cloves in a vinaigrette, but that's going to balance that out with that astringent flavor. You also want to have some kind of mustard. Now what mustard does is not only does it give it a great flavor, but it holds the vinaigrette together so that it doesn't separate. It works as an emulsifier. I brought these out as what not to use. I would not use stone ground or yellow mustard. I would use more of a whole grain mustard or a Dijon mustard, which I don't have today, but either a Dijon or a whole grain would work really well. So that's gonna give it flavor and also a really nice texture where it's bound together. A sweetness is really important as well. So some examples of sweetness could be honey, maple syrup, a brown sugar, even a spoonful of brown sugar. And you can even use something like an apricot preserves or another berry preserves, and that's gonna give that nice sweetness as well. If you'd like to use some spices, you can also use a granulated garlic versus a fresh garlic. These are a couple of Trader Joe's spice mixes that could also be really nice in a vinaigrette to give it some different layers of flavors as well. We're gonna go ahead and make a vinaigrette. And again, we're really focusing on balancing out those flavors. So the general rule for proportions is about 2/3 oil and 1/3 vinegar. I actually prefer more of a half and half. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna use these 2 in our vinaigrette today, and we're gonna use a little bit of whole grain mustard. So I'm gonna start out with the whole grain mustard and just pour about 2 tablespoons of that. And I'm also going to use 1 clove of garlic. It's kind of a small clove. And I don't really need to chop it up, but I do want to break it up. Breaking it up and smashing it is going to release some of those great antioxidants, and it's also going to make it easier to blend up in the blender so that you don't get big chunks of garlic. I'm going to throw those in there as well. Let's put in a couple of green onions. That's going to give it some nice sweet onion flavor. All right, so we've got our mustard, we've got our onion, we've got our garlic. We're going to add in a little bit of honey. Again, you could add in maple syrup, could add in preserves, and do a little bit of sea salt, a little bit of pepper. Now, I'm gonna add in my vinegar. Again, you could do any vinegar of your choice. The reason I like the white vinegar is that it is not color. I like it that it's clear, and I also like it that it has a really mild flavor. Lemon juice is a great addition as well. It's kind of got that sweet, acidic nature to it. And the last thing that we're gonna add is the olive oil, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and blend this up first and add the olive oil at the very, very end. Classically trained chefs would keep this on low like this and pour the olive oil in to keep it emulsified. However, because you used the mustard, it actually should hold it together pretty well without blending it up while it's running. So I'm just gonna add in about the same amount of oil as vinegar. So that is the most simple way to make a vinaigrette. Now at this point, we're gonna taste it and see if we can taste all of those layers and balance. It's perfect. You get the little bite of the vinegar in the back. You have the salt across the whole tongue. It's got a nice smooth oil to it. At this point, you could get fancy and add something like an apricot preserve or another flavoring of your choice. Sometimes even at this point, I'll add a handful of fresh berries. You could add in some pistachio nuts. You could even add in some Parmesan cheese to make it a little bit creamy. So you have your base of those basic ingredients, the onion or garlic, or both, the acid, the fat, the salt, the pepper, and the mustard, and the sweetness. And after that, it's really a blank canvas for you. So this dressing could be great on salads, vegetables, roasted vegetables even, It could be drizzled over a fish or a shrimp dish, which would be really nice. So now that you've got your basic vinaigrette and your understanding of flavor balancing, we really are gonna take it up a notch from here. So enjoy.